Well, hey there, it's Catherine. We have a lot of cards to make today. All of these cards have something in common. They have a watercolor background and glimmer paste, but the way we achieve the backgrounds are different on several of them. So the first thing we're going to do, I took our large clear acrylic block and I just smushed down my ink from my ink pads, Flirty Fuchsia, Party Dress, and Grape Crush. Our inks are really juicy, so just one little tap on that block and you can see how much ink transferred over. And then I spritzed it with my Distress sprayer, and then I'm taking my watercolor cardstock and just dipping and dabbing over and over to get different layers of color. Now, I just did it quickly and kind of once or twice, couple little dips there. You could go further with it and you could use your heat tool. You may have seen me do other videos like that where I dry and then I dip and dry and dip and dry. And you get really interesting, lots of depth in your backgrounds. Went a little simpler on this. And before I cleaned up my block, I took another watercolor background and dipped it and colored it and, you know, got a much lighter situation there. So I'm setting those aside to dry, and I'm grabbing my split chevron stencils. So I'm stenciling this. I discovered this recently on YouTube Live that you could do this with this stencil, but I'm flipping it over and I'm lining it up and I'm just putting it right back on there, and I'm doing two different shades of purple. And the result here is going to be really cool. It ends up looking like ribbon or a streamer. What? When we were playing with this on live, I actually did a live that didn't turn out very well. Something was up with the internet connection, but anyway, couldn't really see it so much, so now I'm doing it again for you, and check that out. Look at how cool it is. So here's the one that I did on the Facebook Live. I did the Flirty Fuchsia, and then I did another layer of color with the Grape Crush, and it looks phenomenal. So in case you noticed, my ink pads in this video were very well loved and very kind of inky. So I went and cleaned them up. Really, really easy to do. I just take the lids off, put them under water, rinse them out and dry them. And then I take a paper towel and just run around the bottom of that lid to clean them up. Honestly, I don't really mind when they're a little messy, but if you do, just to let you know, they're really super easy to clean up. So here we go, time for the glimmer. So this Moonstone Glimmer Paste by Nuvo, I'm in love, and I've been waiting to stock it for a while. We finally got it in. It's a gorgeous paste with a beautiful shimmer and glimmer in it. So I'm just scooping it out of the jar with my Nuvo spatula and just kind of pressing down into the stencil and then spreading it to get a smooth surface. And then just peel your stencil off, and we'll set this aside to dry because we're going to do something cool with it later. And then we're going to go ahead and do the glimmer paste right over the watercolor pieces. Now the ink, the Catherine Pooler ink, is water-based. It's a dye ink. It will react with water, or anything wet. So when the paste goes down on the paper, it's going to wet that ink, and then the ink will mix in with the glimmer paste a little bit. So you'll get a slightly tinted glimmer paste that way. It's pretty cool. So here's what it looks like. This is a Mod Flowers stencil, and again, we're going to let that dry. For this next one, let's try something a little different. You can also color your glimmer paste. So I'm just going to put it onto an acrylic block, add a couple ink refill drops from my Grape Crush ink refill. I always recommend having the ink refills on hand. Our ink pads release ink so well, it gives you a really great stamped image, but also the ink comes out of the pad really easily, which is a benefit when you're stamping because you don't have to work too hard to get your stamps inked up, but then the pad will over time dry out a little bit, so it's great to have those ink refills on hand. And then also you have it for techniques like this. So I colored the glimmer paste, and now I have Grape Crush glimmer paste. I'm just going to stencil it over the scattered circle stencils, just kind of pushing it down into the open spaces on the stencil, and then giving a swipe over the top just to make it flat. And then again, we're going to set that aside to dry. And so let's start working on assembling these cards. So the first thing I did was take my nested labels dies. I had two sizes together. I did not cut them apart, and I sent them through my die cutting machine at the same time. The first one, the frame piece that came out, I put some liquid glue on and then added it to the card front. And because that glimmer paste is bumpy, you might want to put something heavy on top of it. I like to use the big block that we carry. It's nice and heavy, and it holds that down and helps it dry and really get adhered into that dried glimmer paste. So then I used the Perfect Blend stamp set. I stamped Perfect Blend in our icing on the cake color, which is a great dark chocolate. And then Me and You on either side with a cute little heart. And then the little coffee cup. Die cut that and just embellish your frame. Add a couple clear sparkling sequins. This is Crater Lake. It's a great mix of different sizes, and some of those sequins have holes and some don't, so it's a great little mix there. I'm going to use my quick stick to pick them up and just add them to the card. There, done. So now the very dark background, the first one that I did now with the polka dots, it's really super dark. So I think I want to lighten it up a little bit. So I'm just going to add some water in, because like I told you before, the ink is water reactive. So when you add ink to it, or when you add water, you can dab it up with a paper towel and you can lighten that ink. Here is another sample piece that I did with the same technique. And on this one, I did the glimmer paste first, let it dry, and then I sponged color on top. I want to add a little bit more color here just to show you what that looks like. So when I sponge it on, I'm using the blender brushes to do that, and it's darkening the watercolor paper that I started out with, and then the glimmer paste resists the ink. So if you just kind of wipe it down a little bit, don't wipe it too hard, because then your tissue may tear, because the glimmer paste dries kind of textured, or not kind of textured, it does dry textured. So just use a gentle hand on there. Okay, and then we're gonna make like a window card. So I took a piece of cardstock, I just die cut a window or a circle through it, and then I took our Flakes cover plate. So this is made from a bunch of snowflakes just kind of strung together, and it gives a really cool geometric look. And on a card like this, you're not even going to know it's snowflakes. So there you go, extending your winter and Christmas supplies. So I just glued those together, the cover plate piece and the circle window piece, and then I want it to pop up on dimensionals. Also, you can see I took the technique piece and cut it down. I'm saving that extra little piece there, and I'm going to use it on another card. So here's the card I saved that piece for. We're going to use the Awesome and Wonderful stamp set again. The Wonderful, the big block letter one, I'm using Flirty Fuchsia, and I just stamped it off on scratch paper to get a lighter shade of Flirty Fuchsia. And then the cursive one, or the script, right over the top in full strength Flirty Fuchsia. I love this sentiment set. It's so much fun. And then we're just going to do the technique strip, and then just do 2 skinny strips of white cardstock just to give a little bit of extra dimension and interest to the card. They were a little bit longer than my card layer there, so just trimmed a little bit off, and then add another little sentiment, is wonderful is what you are, to the bottom. Add adhesive to the back, add it to the card front, and then we'll add some more Crater Lake sequins. Using the quick stick to pick them up, add some Nuvo adhesive and just kind of scatter them about, and that's it for this card. So next up, we're going to take the piece of watercolor paper that I use the Square Dance stencil on, and we're going to ink blend over the top. So we're doing Flirty Fuchsia, and then the Something Borrowed, and then Lime Ricky. And one of the things I love about these inks is when they blend together, they make some unexpected colors. So that Flirty Fuchsia and Something Borrowed make a really cool indigo. It's just gorgeous. So I'm going to do a little bit of blending back and forth to get a nice look between the colors, make sure I have enough really good rich color on there. Here is the Lime Ricky. It's just gorgeous. I'm going back into the blue, the Something Borrowed, and just darkening that up. And then I'm grabbing my spray bottle. So remember, I used watercolor cardstock on this, so it's going to be able to handle all of this water. And then when I dab up the color, you see it comes right off of that glimmer paste because it resisted the ink. So now I'm going to finish off a card using that ribbon technique piece, the one that I did with the Glimmer Paste and the Flirty Fuchsia. So I'm taking my Flirty Fuchsia ink pad, I'm just using direct to paper and coloring my cardstock. So now I have Flirty Fuchsia cardstock that exactly matches my ink pad. And I cut out the congrats with my die, and then I also took some vellum cardstock and cut out a vine, and then I just layered them on the top. Use some good amount of adhesive there. I added my block just like I did earlier in the video, just to make sure that all gets adhered nicely. And then here is a look at all of the cards I made. So lots of different ways to use these really cool technique pieces. Two of those pieces I haven't done yet, so I still have some stamping to do. But here is the polka dot technique piece, and I just did a simple thank you on there. That is a die cut, and added it to a card base. And then that resist one, just the seriously you are fabulous with some white and black flowers, just really popped. So there's so much you can do. You can go really simple with just a die cut sentiment, or you can layer on different things and kind of go crazy. Thank you so much for being here, watching my videos and subscribing. I appreciate you, and I hope your day is awesome.